Alright, so in the last video we addressed some basic modeling techniques by addressing these little columns here. We talked about bridging for this part. We also talked about difference between duplicates and instances, and we used the duplicate special to be able to create this fence right here. And I just kind of went on my own and did the other side using the same techniques. So on this video I want to talk about we need to start kind of getting into a little bit more complicated aspects of the modeling here. So let's begin. I'm going to begin with these kind of window panels. So again, the first thing you do is basically kind of analyze what's kind of happening here. And when they're open, you see that they have this kind of indentations going inwards and then out. Okay, and so we're gonna try and kind of duplicate that kind of detail into these door panels. Again, just for the sake of efficiency here, sometimes in 3D, if something is not really seen in the camera, you don't have to kind of worry about it. There is no, unless I wanted to close the windows, there is no need to know what's happening behind it. For the purpose of this assignment, I'm just going to keep them open anyway. So I'm going to ignore what's happening behind it, okay? And I'm just going to worry about what's happening here. So I'm going to begin. Let's just use this panel right here. I'm going to go into the front viewport. And again, I need to kind of analyze how I'm going to go about in doing this. And again, this is just my approach. There are many different ways of doing this, I'm just going to show you one way, and by using the techniques and tools that I know, and then we'll see if it actually works out. And but again, just keep in mind that there are many different ways of doing things. So again, by analyzing this, I know I'm going to need more geometry inside this face to be able to create these details. So one of the first things I want to do is kind of divide this in three. And what this is going to allow me to do is to be able to take those divided faces and extrude them inwards, so I can create this kind of square inside. So I'm gonna go ahead and do that. So I'm gonna start by by separating this. Okay. So let's use the insert edge loop tool, and again, these are gonna be pretty kind of arbitrary cuts. So I'm just gonna put them right here, because again, they're not. All of these three panels are not the same size. They're all kind of different. So so it doesn't need to be kind of divided in three equal panels. The next thing I want to do is create an extrusion here to be able to create these squares that are happening inside. So in order to do that, I'm going to go ahead and select these faces, okay, and then I'm going to click on extrude. But just to warn you now, I'm actually going to be kind of making a mistake purposely here. So I'm going to click on extrude. Alright, and again, if you see what's happening here, it's kind of addressing this extrusion as if it was one extrusion rather than three separate panels like I originally wanted to do it. And let me just kind of get out here the X-ray, okay. And again, the reason why this is happening, it's because basically, we click on the extrude, and Maya is assuming that we don't want to kind of separate them. We want to actually make a single extrusion. So that's why you see it like this. But we actually want to have three separate extrusions inwards, and this technique is not going to work very well. So I'm just going to go ahead and press Z to undo. And again, if you don't like shortcuts, you can find that under Edit and Undo. Okay. So again, just going to make sure that extrusion was we undid it. Okay. So there's a couple ways that I can go about this. I can go into my front viewport, and I can and let me just go back to my X-ray view here. I can do each one of these extrusions separately, or I can tell Maya that I wanted to keep the faces separated. By default, anything that you do extrusion wise, pretty much by default is going to keep them together, which is what you just saw. But if I select all these three faces and I checked off that keep faces together and then click on extrude, Again, notice that if I go to this one individually, I can resize it. Alright, and it's actually doing that individual face and not through the whole extrusion. Alright, so it kept the faces separated. So I'm just gonna go ahead and again, by using the references, I'm just gonna do that. Okay. And again, I did an extrusion to all three faces, so I have to make sure to go in there and address every single one individually. Okay, and I'm again using my sub-object mode to actually be able to move these vertices. Okay. And again, keep in mind that we're doing this in an orthographic viewport, and again, orthographic means that it's not affected by perspective. And this is the best way that you can go about and creating these changes. Alright, and so I'm just switching between different components by left clicking, holding that, and then again it's showing me a little bit of pop-up. I don't think it appears in the recording program that I'm using, but I'm just going between this different sub-object modes by doing that. So now I'm on vertices here, and I'm just kind of addressing the last kind of square that I have here at the bottom. Alright, so now we have we have the three panels that we need to do this detail. Now we need to do a series of extrusions so we can actually create this detail. And again, these series of extrusions are I can kind of do them at the same time. Now that I have this, and let me just switch off to just normal shading so we can see what's happening here. So the next thing I'm going to do, I'm going to select these faces, and again I'm trying to address this kind of at the same time so I don't have to do it more than once, just to kind of keep it more effective. But if it makes it easier for you to do it individually, you can do that. So I'm going to click on extrusion. Keeping your face together or not at this point doesn't really affect it, because again they're all separated anyway. Okay. So I'm going to move this in just a bit. Okay. Then I'm going to do, again, I can click on extrusion again, or I can press on G for the next extrusion. Okay. And then the next one, it's going to be kind of going inwards. So again, I'm going to try and address them all at the same time. Okay, so it's going to go inwards and down. Okay, so then the next thing that's going to happen once it goes down is that it's going to go back up in a triangular shape. So again, I'm kind of using my perspective so I can see that detail. And again, our reference, it's not very useful for, you can't really do this in an orthographic. You're going to need to be in this perspective to be able to do this part. So just kind of pick your battles on that. So then again, the next one is we're going to do an extrusion that's going to go up. So again, I can click on extrusion here again, or I can press on G, and it just reselects the last modeling tool, and I'm going to extrude this up. Okay. And I'm going to again make sure that I stick within the same tool. If you deselect it, you can use different kind of tools to be able to do this as well. But I'm not deselecting and then selecting it again, so I can keep using this default axis that comes with the extrusion, which is affecting everything uniformly. So okay, so one more time like that, and then just one more extrusion. Just out like this. Okay, and again, if we want to kind of turn off the wireframe just to see what this looks like. Okay, so not bad. It has the detail. It has all the details that we need. All right. So now, again, one of the problems that we encountered, or that we're going to encounter from doing these kind of basic layout, is that we didn't really instance from the beginning. So we need to kind of do this right now. And what we're going to do, we're going to be doing the instances a little bit differently. Because let's just go back to my shading. All right. And if we look at the proportions of the doors, or at least this one that I did, it's not necessarily centered to the board. It has like a little bit more space on this side. So when we copy it over, it can't just be as the same copy as here. It kind of needs to be flipped over. So to do this, and again, we're going to be doing this with our special duplicate. So we're going to go to Edit, Special Duplicate, and click on this one. We're going to make an instance of this one, and at the same time, what we want to do is to kind of flip it over, so this kind of extra space that it has here at the end, it's at the same on the other side. So if we another thing that I want to do at this point is just center the pivot. Again, when you manipulate the sub-object mode of the Maya, what happens is that the center of the pivot kind of stays where it originally was. So first thing I'm going to do is just center my pivot. Okay. Or again, if you want to make it more animation friendly, you could always just hold D so you can manipulate the pivot and just move it to where it's going to be turning from, like this. So again, if I was to go into my perspective and let's just switch off the X-ray on this one, and I move my pivot from there, it's going to be rotating from that point, just like the actual window would, the window panel would rotate from. So again, it's just kind of completely up to you how you want to set that up. But let's just go back to the front. Let's turn on our X-ray, and again, what we want to do is make a duplicate of this, but we need to flip it so the extra space on this side is actually applies on the other side as well. So the first thing we need to do is figure out from where it's going to be kind of flipping to. So again, this one is your x-axis, and if you move here, you can see that the negative numbers on the translate x are moving towards 0. That means it needs to be flipped on the positive of it. Okay, on the positive axis of it. So we have and we're not going to be using translate or rotate. You actually have to kind of scale it negatively on the x-axis. So I'm going to go here into scale and put a minus on it. So when I apply the instance, what it's going to do, it's basically take this pretty much flip it over. Okay, so again, making sure that this is an instance, and I'm going to scale it on the negative side. I'm going to click on apply, again making sure that your number of copies is 1, because again, we were using it to create the fence and stuff like that, so you might have like a higher number here. So either make sure that you reset your settings every time, or be mindful of the settings that are on the tool right now. So I'm just going to go ahead and apply it. Okay, so what just happened is that it took this model and pretty much it flipped it over. And again, notice that the instance that I created has more space on this side because it took this side and pretty much flipped it over on this one. So now I can get rid of this kind of initial box that I put there, and I can again, let me turn on my wireframe so I can see this better, and I can put it right here. Okay, and again, it's an instance just in case I need to go back here and add more detail to it. So anything that I do to one is going to do to the others. Okay, now I could take the time now to make instances of these and put it up here, but I'm most likely gonna be end up using this window frame for the details. For the same window for the windows that we have on top. So I probably don't want to make an instance of this until I'm done with that part. Okay, so that covers kind of creating some details by using the and again, mostly you're gonna be using mostly we've been using the insert edge loop tool, and we've been using extrude. We also use bridge for this one, but it's now when you start realizing there's a couple of tools that you're going to be using more than most, which is why some people like to kind of customize their shelves. And if you customize yours, if I had a customized shelf, I'd probably have extrude, insert edge loop tool, and then perhaps bridge. And again, it just kind of depends on what you use, and that's what these shortcuts are for. For me, it's more comfortable to just kind of having this menu separated and just select them through here. But if you find it more comfortable to use the shelf, just make sure you keep in mind what tools you're using the most. Alright, so let's move on from these window panels to this door. And again, this one's going to be a little bit more complicated. And one of the things that we're going to be kind of working on a door here, it's the idea of mirroring. And again, let me just kind of find a reference for our door here. Alright. And again, well, the idea of mirroring is that you work on one side and not both side. You know what? Rather than the frame, I think I'm probably gonna do the door here, which again is not that different from what we did on the window here. But what I want to show is that I'm basically gonna build half of the door and then just mirror it over, kind of in a similar way that we created the duplicate special, but we're gonna be using a different tool. Okay. So, to do that, let's see. Again, let's just kind of analyze what we got here. So, I'm going to start by adding a little bit of geometry to my door here. And again, this one is probably one of the first ones that I built. I can actually add some subdivisions. Okay. And again, the problem that you're seeing here and why it's doing some of this funky stuff is because if you go in and change the sub-object mode, the location of the of these vertices and edges of the original object, without using this input, is that it's essentially it's just kind of damage somewhat the object. So any change that we try and do through here is going to pretty much explode the geometry of our objects. So using this is not really an option at this point, unless I wanted to start from a new box, but I really don't. So we're going to be doing a couple things here. I want to cut this in half, and I also want to kind of divide it in three, the same way that I did with this panel. Okay, so let's begin with that. And again, we're going to be using a couple tools here for this. I'm going to use the insert edge loop tool, but rather than arbitrarily just put a line wherever I want, I'm going to actually go into the settings of it. Let's see, it's this one. Okay, so these are the tool settings, and again, it kind of appeared right here. It should have just popped up as a window, but that's fine. Okay. So by default, this tool is going to be the setting is going to be at relative distance from edge. We actually want to change it so we can actually create a division right in the middle of this object. And to do that, I'm going to switch from relative distance from edge, which it kind of allows me to just interactively just put it wherever I want, into the multiple edge loops. Okay, and what this is going to allow, what this allows to do is for you to be able to create as many edge loops as possible in a very equidistant way. meaning that if I wanted to come here and divide this into, let's say, 10 equidistant pieces, let's just do 10, and I click anywhere on this edge right here, it's going to actually create 10 different divisions. Okay, but again, we don't want to do that. We actually just want to create 2 different equidistant sides, so I'm actually going to have just one edge loop. Alright, and it's going to, no matter where I kind of click here on this object, it's going to place it right in the middle. Okay, so that takes care of that part, and then I'm going to go back and change the setting to the relative distance, because again, I need to make similar divisions to what I did on this window panel to be able to create the details on the store. Okay, so I'm going to change that to relative distance from edge. Okay, and then you can keep the tool settings open or just close it. And again, this one's going to be a little more arbitrary because all 3 of these are at different distances. Okay, so I'm just going to create one here, and again, keep in mind, if you haven't noticed already, that the edge loop tool creates a loop around your object and creates a division. Okay, so and again, let's just start kind of working on the idea that we're actually going to be mirroring this rather than working on both sides individually. Okay, so what I'm going to do right now, it's I'm going to get rid of one side of this door. Okay, and I'm going to click on delete. So I selected those faces and just click on delete, and then if we go here into my perspective and let's just go back to this. Okay, so you're gonna see that there's an opening on this piece of geometry. So just to kind of give you an idea of how 3D geometry is composed, it's basically a hollow object in there. Okay. All right. But let's just kind of continue working on our door here. Let's go back to our front viewport. Let's go into an X-ray. And having those open faces, it's going to be pretty important when it comes to mirroring, just like it was for our bridging tool here, because remember we had to delete faces here for this to work. So I'm going to come here, and just like I did before, I'm going to create extrusions to create those details. And again, I have to make sure, since I'm going to be doing these kind of at the same time, I'm going to make sure that the faces are not together. So this needs to be checked off. So check it back off if you check that back on right after we ended up with the same with the other panel. Sorry. So I'm going to click on these again separately. I'm going to click on extrude. Okay, and then I'm just gonna move them all together at the same time like this, and just move them to the side like that, and then I'm gonna use the scale tool for this detail. Okay, and again, notice that it's not gonna match. I was just kind of going by this one, but we're gonna have to go in here and kind of move some of these edges around a little bit. So I'm gonna select this edge. Move tool, it's W, or you can just click here on your tools on the side. Okay, so move that up a little bit. This one needs to be moved up as well. This one needs to be all the way up here. Okay, and we need to kind of change this one as well. Okay, and again, I'm going to assume that this is basically the same detail that we kind of built here. And it's kind of somewhat similar. We probably have a couple more steps here. But without any higher resolution of these images, we're going to have to kind of maybe guess or to have a little bit of creative license on what's actually happening here. So let's just select all 3 again. First extrusion we're gonna do, it's it just looks like it's a little bit of a ladder there. And let me just see if I have something that shows a little bit more clearly what's going on there. And again, one of the problems with finding your references online is that they're not going to be really high resolution, and sometimes you can't clearly see what the details there. So in this case, we have to kind of take a little bit of creative license to figure out what's in there, and I'm just going to assume that it's basically the same, similar kind of detail that we have right here. So I'm just basically going to take the same approach. So let's select all these three faces. Again, I'm holding shift to select multiple faces. I'm going to switch back to my perspective. Okay. Then I'm going to click on extrude to go inwards once, and again, probably easier if I just kind of turn off my X-ray here. So I'm going to go inwards once, and then we're going to do another extrusion. So either go to extrude or press on G to repeat the last tool you used. And that didn't work, so let's just gonna do it one more time. Okay, and again, I'm keeping this selected so I can use the default tools that comes with the extrusion, which allows me to move and kind of scale at the same time. Alright, and again, this one's gonna be like, it looks like it's like a little bit of a step. It's a little bit different than the window. So it looks just like two steps, I guess. So again, let's just go ahead and change that a bit here. And again, I'm kind of taking a little bit of creative license here because I can't clearly see the detail here, but I'm assuming it's something like this. So let's press G again for another extrusion. Go down. And then G one more time to create another extrusion. Okay. And here. Alright, and once we have that kind of, well, we still need to create, let's just leave it at this. And then we need to kind of extrude this inwards to create these little kind of panels inside. So again, we're going to have to turn on an X-ray again to just kind of see where those kind of sit. So let's just switch back to our front viewport. Alright, and again, the image that I have right there doesn't have a lot of resolution, so I'm just kind of guesstimating. A guesstimator on this one. I'm just going to go ahead and select the other ones individually so I can okay, and this one's going to be a little bit of different. Okay. So now that we have the shape for this, we need to kind of extrude it out. So alright, we have all three. So I'm going to click on extrude, and this one's just going to go a little bit up. Alright, and then we're going to do one last extrusion kind of inwards and then up a little bit. Okay, so we have now the detail of the door, and we address one side. And let me just turn off my tool settings here. So now we're going to mirror this side into the other side. And again, the idea behind it was that we were only going to address the detail on one side and just mirror over, so we didn't have to do the whole thing. Okay, and we're going to apply similar principles to a couple of things here in the house. So by having this selected, I'm going to go into mesh. Okay, and we're going to be using the mirror geometry tool, which is right here at the bottom. So I'm going to click on the options. I don't want to hit on it right away. I want to look at what options I have. And again, it's always kind of important to know how you're mirroring this. and the location of your pivot is kind of important too. So if we want this to kind of flip over in the, correctly, we're going to need to make sure that our pivot is not at the center of this, but at the center of the final object. Because again, remember, this is only half of the door. So by holding D, okay, I'm just going to move over and kind of guesstimate where the middle of the final object is going to be, like, the location of it, sorry. And then we need to come here and kind of again, we need to figure out whether it's mirrored on the positive X, because again, this is your X-axis right here, or the negative. So one way to figure that out is again, if you move on the X-axis, and we're moving right now, we're at 5.2 something. If I move it on this direction, which is the side that it needs to flip on, and increases, that means that it needs to flip on a positive X-axis. If I was moving in this direction and this was going down, that means it would have to go on a negative. So the mirror direction is going to be the positive X, and we do want to keep the merge with original, and the merge vertices kind of checked on, so that's correct. And then we're just going to click on apply. Okay, and now let's just turn off my wireframe here. We have created the model for a door, and it has all the details. And again, we only had to work on half of it, and then the other half was created by using the mirror geometry tool. Okay, and again, it only something like this only remember that at the beginning we deleted half of this and we were left with a hole here. Okay, the mirror geometry is not going to work very well if you actually have geometry there, so you need to make sure that there's a hole that the mirror geometry can actually kind of mirror over and then kind of merge with the original. Okay, and if for some reason the mirror didn't work the same way that it did for me, again, just remember that in your channel box you actually have a history of the tools that you're using, and the last one that I used, again, the mirror tool is going to be right here on top. So if I click on this one, it gives me a couple of settings that I can kind of change, and if it wasn't right in the middle where I needed it to be, you can always come here and kind of change the location of it. Okay, so that's one. Sometimes you're gonna see issues right here in the connections, so you're gonna have to kind of mess around with the threshold, the merge threshold, and this could clean up some of the problems as well. So again, just remember that this is true for pretty much any tool that you use. So for instance, before the mirroring we have the extrude, so this gives me information of what I actually did with that extruding tool. And it gives me also the ability to go in here and change it if I want to. Okay, so just kind of keep that in mind. Alright, okay, so again, we just kind of used a couple of more complex kind of modeling techniques. We keep using the extrude and the insert edge loop tool, but we also use the duplicate special to mirror this door. Okay. And again, we had to do that because if we were just going to copy this over, it wouldn't have made sense, because there's more space on this side than it is on this one. And then for the door, again, we use a similar modeling technique that we did on the window panels, but we only address half of the model and then we mirror it over to then complete the door. So again, mirroring sometimes it's a more smart way of going about building some models, because you only have to address half the model and not the whole thing. Okay, so this concludes this lesson.